What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of
Ball Status.
Listen, we have all sorts of buttons here. You just wait. That's right, guys. I'm Doug Miller, CEO of something. I'm here with Patrick Mabe.
I'm the sales guy of something.
No, wait. This is a big deal. This is an announcement. Tell them what your new title is. This is a big deal.
So Doug was so kindly to give me a new title yesterday. I am the Vice President of Sales for Core Nutritionals and America Labs.
Come out.
There you go. And then we also have
Logan Bailey. I am the Director of Distribution for Core Nutritionals and America Labs, and also America Energy.
Right on.
Patrick.
And then our special guest today. Ooh, it's a windy one today.
The America Energy thing gets a little gray, you know.
All right, we'll get into
the
hold on.
title
Let's
thing.
introduce. Let's introduce.
Okay, sorry.
We got a guest here. All right.
Oh,
To my right, we have.
Justin Weeks, CEO of Europa.
Doesn't that have a nice ring to it? The CEO.
3 digits.
Yeah, makes you pucker a little bit. All right, guys. So we're back. I don't even know what episode this is, and this is Boss Status. This is where we talk about the business of health and the health of business. Don't you like that slogan?
That's a great
This
one.
is like real company. We're gonna fool the CEO of Europa here and think we're a real company. We got.
It sounds professional.
Yeah, and can we just take a moment to just take a look at this new smoking jacket I got? It's like real velvet or silk, or I'm not even sure what this is. This was a birthday gift from some of the employees here, so thank you guys. Before we jump into this, America Energy, thank you. We're gonna get into.
dude,
I know you.
I'm not with it today.
Right. So the key is cigars and victory. Thank me later. All right.
Yeah,
So,
I read mine early too.
for those who don't know, Europa is, I would like to describe it, they're probably the 800-pound gorilla of sports nutrition distribution, right? Specialty? You guys are the...
We are, to a degree, right?
To a degree.
So, obviously, as everybody knows, right, the pandemic affected all of us in a variety of different ways, right? At one point in time, Europa was at the top of, obviously, our distribution industry. And, again, so many challenges, so many setbacks. We're back in the game and have been for about the last 18 months on rebuilding the organization. And first and foremost, thank you guys for obviously allowing me the opportunity to be here. You guys run a great brand. You got a great following, and excited to obviously be a part of it. And I would also say, obviously, there's a ton of great other distributors out there too. They run a lot of great professional organizations, and friends with most of those guys. As much as I would say that they're competitors, it's still a journey, and we're still, in a lot of ways working together to obviously rebuild not only our business, but our industry.
So let's take a step back. So we've had a relationship. When did we launch in Europa, the brands?
Was it August of last year?
Yeah, I think 2020. So it's been a little bit over a year now. So
When we were crunching, we were in this training room.
in this building, yeah.
Yeah, we were crunching
So
numbers.
we've been with them, and so you guys understand. So Europa distributes to a lot of mom and pop specialty stores, but also some grocery, a lot of big gym chains, a lot of specialty type locations. But before we go down the distribution route, let's figure out, let's take a step back. Let's get the Justin Weeks story. And I will say it was really funny before we came on here. Logan mentioned, Justin will be real loud. He'll be like, yeehaw, beforehand. And then he gets on. He's like, yes, and thank you for having me. This is a wonderful time here.
That's about accurate.
Yeah.
That's about
So we're going to try to bring out the yeehaw here, all right? Let's go back to the beginning. Let's get a quick origin story of, what is your background? So now you are, let's be honest, you're the big dog at Europa, a large sports nutrition distributor. How did you get here? What was your... what is your path to get here? Did you start in sales? Were you a gym manager somewhere? What's your deal?
Yeah. So, funny enough, right before I graduated college, I had to get an internship, for 3 weeks to basically get my diploma, right? I played baseball at Elon University, 2 college World Series appearances. Logan can continue to basically play in this church softball league. That'll be fun for him. Congratulations. Come on.
He talks about his dingers all the time. Let me tell
slow
you.
pitch softball, over 40 league. Congratulations.
Have you ever gotten thrown out of a slow pitch softball
exactly,
game?
you know, and that would be a story worth hearing, right? No, but so literally, I knew Jeff and Eric.
Who are, just for the people that don't know, Jeff and Eric.
Jeff and Eric are the original founders of Europa. And obviously, you know, they started the business back in 1991. And then you kind of fast forward and, you know, the early 2000s and even mid 2000s, right? You know, were kind of that birth of distribution where all these supplement brands and everybody were kind of coming into the pipeline. And they were, you know, really kind of teed up to be that dominant player. So anyway, long story short, I had to graduate. I had to get a diploma. You know, I needed a 3-week internship to do so. Literally called Jeff. Jeff's like, man, I don't have anything for you. I'm like, cool. You know, I mean, you're married to my sister, but, you know, and not a lot of people know that, but I'm like, okay, cool. Well, then, you. You know?
Yeah.
And then so at the end of the day, you know, I drive across town to this Gold's Gym franchisee who was in the town of Burlington. And I walked in there. He happened to be there. And I'm like, look, man, you know, I need this to graduate. It's a 3-week deal. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do whatever you tell me to do. And I'm free. So he's like, when can you start? And I'm like, today, you know. And then at the end of that 3 weeks, he was like, man, he goes, what are you going to do now? I'm like, well, you know, I don't really know. He's like, well, do you want a job? So I'm like, yeah, you know, I mean, I'm not doing anything. Why not? You know? And so that was kind of my first job into the industry when I left college. And about 3 months after that, I wound up running his club. And at the time, there was a guy in the industry who worked for Europa, who, in my opinion, is a legend and probably one of the best human beings you'll ever meet. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2008. But his name was Len McAteer. And Lenny Mac, you know, would basically work at Europa Monday, Tuesday, drive home, take care of his mother who lived in Burlington, North Carolina. And he just happened to train at my gym. And we're sitting there eating breakfast one morning. He's in the booth behind me, and I turn around like, you're Len McAteer. And you would never mistake this guy, right? He was like 5'10", 300 pounds, shredded, you know, year-round, right? And I'm like, you know, man, I'm Compton's brother-in-law. You know, Lisa's my sister. And he's like, no, you know, so we just built a kind of ground-up relationship. I'm like, man, the last time I saw you, I was 11 years old at Jeff's wedding, right? You know, and you're standing around all these refrigerators essentially with heads, you know, when you're that little. And, you know, kind of bring it full circle, you know, after about, you know, 8 months of running that gym, he's like, man, why don't I take your resume up to Europa? I'm like, well, you know, Jeff really wasn't big on the family aspect and dynamic. And he's like, well, man, just give it to me. Let me see what I can do. So I went on 3 interviews for Europa. And the first day I started at Europa was the first day Jeff knew I was working at Europa. You know, which was awesome. And honestly, frankly, I wouldn't have wanted it any other way, right? And started working with Rick Hurd, my partner at Europa, and a guy named Todd Barber at the time who was over inventory, and the 3 of us reported to Robbie Duncan. And so I've kind of worked with those guys and for Robbie for 17 years now.
So what was that starting position? Was that like a sales position?
No, I was actually in business analysis.
Okay. What the heck does that mean?
That means basically running a bunch of reports, analyzing basically sales trends, things of that nature. And then really kind of from there, Robbie gave Rick and I an opportunity. We didn't have a sales manager at the time, so he kind of made us both, you know, co-sales managers of Europa. And
how many people are at Europa at this point?
So at this point, we've got right at about 135 people.
All right, so you're a good size. I mean,
we're a good size, scaled back a lot.
Yeah.
Just obviously over the years and through COVID. And then really from there, Rick and I stayed partners and still are to this day to a lot of degrees, you know, managing sales. And then, you know, you kind of come through COVID, you kind of come through basically all the challenges that we wound up having.
So did you go from sales manager to CEO, or were there other steps?
No.
Like, did you climb this ladder, the corporate Europa ladder?
Well, it's a little shorter than that, right? So Rick and I basically ran sales for, I'm gonna say 14, 15 years, whatever it was, right?
So you by running sales, so just to,
Yep.
so you have like a pit of salespeople, right? That you manage, right?
Yeah. So at one point in time, we had almost 70 salespeople versus inside, outside, customer service, etc. Right? Anybody who kind of outwardly facing touched a customer relationship, and then really from there, when we came through COVID and Jeff and Eric had to do the decision that they had to make, or make the decision they had
We'll
to make.
get to that. Don't jump ahead
No,
too much.
I'm not jumping ahead.
Okay.
I'm not jumping ahead, but it is kind of teeing up to where we are today. So at that point, the equity guys came in and they offered me a position of VP of sales, right? And then to make it shorter, hey, one more spot.
Well, that's where you top out here, just so you know. He's pretty much
Fair enough.
at the peak of his career right about now.
Fair enough. Not to pigeonhole you, but
Yeah.
So, really, at that point in time, Robbie, who I'd worked for forever, who'd been with the company 31 years, really basically started to have kind of that reflection moment, right? He's been doing it 13, 14 hours every day for 31 years. And he had some stuff kind of come up, extended family, things like that, daughters getting married, wanting to spend time. He's, and we talked about it, for about a month, where he's like, man, I'm thinking about stepping away. And, Robbie's been not only a mentor in the building, but obviously a great friend out of the building, and still obviously is today. And, I'm like, okay, well, then I don't know what's going to happen from here, but I guess we're going to figure it out, right? And the equity guys came to me and said, hey, do you want to take this on? And my first initial response to him, I told him no. I didn't. And we can get to that too. I mean, there's layers there where, again, I don't have a wife. I don't have kids, right? I've been married to this place for 17 years. These people are as much my family as anybody is. And you as an owner of this business understands, at that time when you cross over into that next role, all those people are looking to you to make not only the right decision, but also protect their family.
Absolutely.
And that weighs on me every day.
That's the burden of leadership.
It
I just
is,
made a post
right?
of that the other
It
day.
is.
It's like you have to take care of all that.
And so I've known most of those people, like I said, for as long as I have. And it weighed on me a lot, there for a couple weeks. And I accepted it and own it, good and bad. And hopefully we'll figure it out. And the one thing I'll say, and I made it clear, kind of day one, I don't have all the answers. I'm never going to have all the answers, but we've got a really good leadership team around us and a bunch of great employees. And I think that collectively at the end of the day, we'll come up with the right solution. And that's really kind of first and foremost what our path forward will be that collective body looking toward that future direction of how we get to where we need to be and try to avoid all the landmines in between.
So let's jump back go back 5 years.
I gave you as much as I could in 10 minutes.
There you go.
great.
No, that was good.
Yeah.
That was good. That was good. But now let's get down into because there were some fundamental changes in distribution and Europa specifically within the last handful of years, right? Mm-hmm. You might need to
gotta
relay.
relight.
When you talk a lot,
and you get winded,
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Can we edit this part?
No, this is real time. So, if we jump back 5 years or so, distribution looked differently. Let's go back 8 years, right? Distribution looked differently.
Well, 2015 when I joined the industry,
we were buying a lot of powders and pills.
Yeah.
Everything was coming from
Europa.
2015, my paycheck was coming from Europa.
Yeah.
What a world.
What a world. It all comes full circle. So, what have you seen happen over the last, half a dozen years or so for distribution? Because, from the outside, it looks like I know because we have 12 stores, right? And we do buy from Europa, right. But we used to go from getting just about everything from Europa to now literally getting drinks and snacks from Europa.
Yep.
I know you hate that too.
Absolutely.
You hate that. But so what do you think has happened besides obviously the energy drink space becoming so big in the, the sports nutrition world? But, what percentage of your sales changed? I mean, you were probably more pills and powders than you were drinks and snacks, right?
Absolutely. So really the change probably started to happen in around 2019, right? Before that, the Europa, if you balance the category, beverage was probably about 20 to 22%, of overall business. Everything else was dry, right? And then really what happened, on the distribution model when COVID basically hit, a lot of people, wound up sucking up the bulk of the, call it, let's just say 300 influential retailers out there, to where they realized, okay, well, we're going to take these people direct, sell them the profitable stuff,
save
right?
some margin.
But then we're going to lean on DSD to really service the beverage business, right? I would even argue that it started before that. So there's 2 points of differentiation in my world that I see have changed, right? You have point of sweat, point of consumption. Point of sweat is the gym market. It's still, at the end of the day, if you went to a CBG company, they would look at point of sweat, the gym market, as food service, right? They're going to pay a premium, mark it up, do whatever you got to do. It's straight convenience. They're going to buy it just because you got it, right? They're not going to price shop you, right? So you have point of consumption, which is where a brand crosses the aisle. Walmart's deeper in the game today. Your grocery store is deeper into the game. You've got non-traditional retailers that own massive footprints that are now in the game, right? So you as America Energy, right? If America Energy scales, at the end of the day, you're either going to call one of basically 3 people, maybe 4. It's going to be Anheuser-Busch, it's going to be Coke, it's going to be Pepsi, right? Because when it comes to the DSD market, it may be a McLean's, depending upon what your C-store distribution looks like. But, those are the guys that are the best route to market, for beverage, because they're running trucks, right? That's their entire business model. In my world, where we try to basically have this niche catered experience where somebody can basically get, you can get beverage and you can get dry and then you can get your snacks and things of that nature. Right now, the customer basket is so lopsided. So when I look at it and I say, okay, XYZ retailer, is buying, average basket size of $600. What's that $600 equate to? And it's, to your point, drinks and beverage.
So
right?
what percentage are you now through COVID? If you were 20% drinks beforehand, beforehand, because I think it was a perfect storm, right?
Yeah.
It was a lot of drinks and snacks, a lot of sports nutrition brands that you have relationships with coming into those markets, and it was COVID, and people think, shoot, just to survive, we need to push D2C, because that's where the margin is.
We all made choices, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to.
Right. And so now, out of COVID, I would assume that number has flipped.
It's flipped dramatically, right? 70% of the business that leaves my door has a beverage on it. 40% of my total business is beverage today. So where it basically,
well, that's what kills you because of the shipping, right?
100%.
Like the shipping of 70%, even when you're selling the powders, if you have to throw in the drinks on there, that's just going to kill your shipping. So
absolutely.
So what do you do? Or do you push people for the same amount of margin on drinks as you do for powders
when
and
negotiating
pills?
with a brand?
Yeah.
No. So you can make less on powders at the end of the day, because again, you're taking the Walmart approach of profit per square inch, right? It takes my packers and pickers less time to travel the warehouse with basically a cart of dry goods versus a cart of wet, right? So our carts in our warehouse and basically the pick pack scenario, right? You may have 500, 600 pounds, on a cart that may equate to $800 in profit. Versus that same logic applied to dry goods on that cart going around, you may have $2,800 worth of profit, right? It's one of those things where you just kind of got to balance the equation as best as possible. Where we're trying to pivot today is a couple different ways, right? One, I'm a big believer. Well, God, we could go a ton of different ways here. To keep it basically brand and product centric here, from a brand perspective, what we're trying to do is, one, pivot around our relationships with our brand communities on who do we have the best relationship, who's working with, who's leaning in with us, who's going to be a true partner, not just today, but 5 years from now. And two, obviously recognizing within ourselves, we can't be the one-stop shop for everybody as we scale up and try to rebuild our business as we once were. You just can't, right? I'd love to carry everything.
One-stop shop from a brand perspective or from a store perspective?
From a store perspective.
Got it. Yeah.
So, in your stores today, you may carry 1,000 unique SKUs. Well, I'm not going to carry something that I'm going to sell 12 of in a month to somebody because it's diluting my cash, right? I've got to stay centric inside core, but then in turn, see the pun right there?
Yeah,
I just
see-
did?
see what you
You're
did there.
welcome. You know, Logan, take notes, write that down. And so, you know, we've got to live in basically somewhat of a box before we can break through the box and recreate it. From a customer perspective, right? You know, it's one of those things that's kind of changed the dynamic of where we have to have the right conversations with people and say, look, I want to give you all the beverage you need. To your point a minute ago, it's a lot of cost basically going into that box when you put it into a FedEx, you know, shipping system that says, look, I'm going to give you this. I need this to come along with it. We need some of this to be a part of the equation to help balance it, right?
So what do you do with these, with the drinks? Because they are so, I mean, we know we ship some direct, you know, to consumer ourselves.
It sucks.
It sucks. So what do you do, right? Do you surcharges now on drink? How's it?
Yeah,
How are you combating? I mean, how expensive shipping is and everything.
So, you know what's funny is when you talk small parcel, right? You know, your FedEx, UPS, whatever, right? You know, our rate, and I'm going to be cocky here and say it's probably one of the best in the country. You know, which would be cool if the way around that wasn't around fuel surcharges, admin fees, which is basically how they alter the rate, right? So at the end of the day, how we're approaching it is basically saying, look, you know, we have to go back to the retailer at this point and just have the honest conversation around it, right? And just say, look, we're never gonna burden you with the entire cost. You'd lose your mind, right? I've got to get back at least somewhere between 30 and 40%. That to me means more than trying to basically press upon my full rate recovery to any independent retailer.
So
because it's never going to happen.
How many orders are you shipping and losing money? Because I'm assuming it happens a lot. I mean,
it happens more than it should.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, like, you know, that winds up being kind of the tough situation where the rep, who has a ton of autonomy for us because we trust those guys, you know, has to make the right decision at the point in time of the order.
So let's talk about the sales reps for a second. So do they see everything when they're keying in an order? Do they see shipping rates, cost of goods?
Nope.
Do they see? They don't see any of that. So they don't even really know. They have to know.
So we have a fairly robust reporting system.
Yeah.
That they'll see it, you know, kind of the day after, and then we shift.
Yeah.
Because everything we do is transactional, right?
Right.
So a good example would be, you know, if I had to ship something to Hawaii, right? You know, and I'm charging somebody $3 a case for drinks. The same $3 going to Hawaii is not the same $3 going to, you know, Houston, Texas, out of my Dallas-Fort Worth facility, right? You know, call it tenfold, right? So that becomes more of a negotiation. Anything LTL freight related, we use a company called Transportation Insight. If anybody's familiar with that, basically what Transportation Insight does is basically they run it through a pro-ship method of saying, look, here's 5 carriers. These are the rates of these 5 carriers for these specific lanes. And then you just basically make the best call that you possibly can there. And sometimes it's not the cheapest call because certain lanes basically have better drivers. They have better experience. So you may go with a more expensive option just depending upon what level of service you're trying to provide.
So I want to talk a little bit more about sales reps, but I'll get back to that in a second. I want to talk about the actual transition. So Eric and Jeff, they were literally the owners of Europa. Like that was their business, their baby. That
Owners and founders,
that they started. So when COVID came, and I mean it hurt everybody. What happened? Did they make a decision where they were like, listen, we're just not going to hang on. We've had enough. Like, what happened, and then who came in and helped revitalize, keep it alive, really, right?
Can I ask a real dumb? It's a good, simple, dumb question, but
that's your job.
Eric and it's my job. Eric and Jeff, founders. Where does the word Europa come from?
Oh God, do you know the story?
So Eric always had this fascination with Europe. Right?
With Europe,
and,
okay.
And Eric was really good friends and still is to this day, you know, with Lee Haney.
Yep.
Right? And they had this whole, you know, European tour thing that they did. And that's where, Eric kind of landed on this thing called Europa. Jeff's favorite color was purple. There we are.
So in Eric's office, when the office that's actually right next door to where Justin's is now, there was a picture on the wall of Lee Haney flexing on top of Mount Olympus or it's Lee Haney with his shirt off and a pair of blue jeans flexing on the top of Mount Olympus, and he goes, "Man, that right there, that's where I decided this place is gonna be called Europa, right there." and like I just gave Eric Hillman a huge Southern accent. He does not have one at all.
Not at all. I like it though.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he used to love and Big E I still very close with him today.
Yeah.
He still has just stuff. Like if everybody that knows
I
him,
remember his office.
he just has
all
stuff.
Well, so now he started this basically gym, right? And it's Lenny Mack, the guy I was referring to. He named it after him, Lenny Mack's Powerhouse Gym. And if you walk in there, it's basically like this montage of, all this stuff,
Nostalgia.
from, he got it from Venice. He's got it. He was tight friends with Joe Weider. That he's got all this stuff in there. It's almost like a
That's cool.
museum.
It's
Where is the
literally
gym?
Like 2 minutes from the office.
Yeah, off of South Tryon.
Yeah. So he's got, like he said, he's real tight with the Weeders. And essentially, the Weeders obviously owned all the magazines and the publications back in the day of the bodybuilders and, every fitness type. Everybody remembers the was it Muscular Development and, so all of those old pictures of like the 80s bodybuilders, like they would do a photo shoot and then they would take that photo and put it in a box. Apparently Hillman got permission to just go to that box. Yeah. And there is literally from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and early 90s is just pictures all over the gym now. It's unreal.
Pretty cool.
It really is cool.
So so what happened? Like they just had enough. They were just what happened?
So you'll never meet two better human beings than Jeff and Eric, and
I'll agree with that.
Say that.
I mean, from my interactions with them, they're somewhat limited, but they've always been great.
Yeah.
Even not to cut you off, but speaking for me personally, like I wouldn't be sitting right here having this conversation with you guys had it not been for Eric Hillman, right? Like my truck broke down at a gas station when I was 19 years old, and I just see this big giant blonde head guy just come walking up to me, and he's like, "Hey, bro, you need a jump?" And it's like, yeah, I do actually. And long story short, gave me a jump, and it's kind of one of those things where like God makes things happen for a reason. Like I talked to him years later about that incident. He's like, "Oh, bro, I wasn't even supposed to be out that night. Like that's the only vehicle I have jumper cables in. Like I don't keep jumper cables on me." He's like, so, and then fast forward, here I am, what is this, 10 years later talking to you guys.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
so
awesome.
It's cool.
Yeah. So it basically what happened, COVID hits. Nobody knows how long it's going to last. Right. And those guys just basically committed, look, we're going to weather the storm here, and, at the time around May, June, April, somewhere in there of 2020, right? You have some of the biggest corporations out there that we all chase and sell to start filing, right? 24-hour files, Gold's files, export, goes through their hardship, UFIT files, like, GNC files, like, it's one after the other.
You had to go there.
I did. Sorry. Apologize. Sore subject. But it happens, right?
Yeah.
And my time frame may be off there some. But, really at the end of the day, those guys just kind of kept pumping personal money into it. Yeah. Now, hindsight 2020, what we did was we rallied behind all the big box business that we had. So your HEBs, Harris Teeters, Academy, Dick's Sporting Goods, like all those people, right? Because from a sales perspective, if you lose those people, it's really hard to go get them back.
Yeah.
Right? It just is. But in the same breath, all those guys changed their terms policies. So now you're basically extending cash 45 to 90 days. Hurts. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so you basically kind of, you make decisions, you live by them, et cetera. And then, Jeff and Eric just kind of kept pumping personal money into this thing, and then finally got to the point where they're like, guys, we can't do this anymore. Like, just can't. So we had a meeting, and it was in April of 2021. Now, hindsight 2020, Had those guys possibly filed at the same time everybody else was, does it change the outlook that now creates a better path for us today with brands? Possibly. Don't know. But they didn't. They tried to stick it out. They tried to make it right, and just couldn't rebound from it, right? So then at that point in time, we initiated the Warren Act, giving basically all employees 60 days. Look, hey, if you need to go find something, we understand. It is what it is. And at the, call it the 11th hour, right? We had a partner out of New York who've been really good guys. AFI, they run a hedge out of the city. They've done a lot of great investments with distressed businesses, and they infused Europa, right? And
so with that, did Jeff and Eric leave? Like they bought out their ownership of the, essentially.
It wasn't even so much a buyout, man. Like they literally paid to leave. As crazy as that sounds, right? Now,
well, I guess, yeah. I mean, it's a huge burden, right?
Yeah,
like,
it is. So they still believed enough in Europa that they put money into the AFI partnership, right? Because this is their legacy. This is their baby, right? They didn't want to see it go away. And the last thing they wanted to do was burn anybody on the way out. But a lot of people did. Not hiding from that fact either, right? Like, a lot of people, on the vendor side took a haircut. And Robbie spent a long time basically trying to remend fences and build relationships back. And at the end of the day, that's my job now.
I remember that very awkward call from David Hayes.
Yeah.
So I have some bad news and some good news for you.
Yeah.
Which is weird. I mean, like, because it wasn't a bankruptcy.
No.
Which made it like, and we were peanuts, right? We were just selling beef sticks to you guys, so we were peanut. Like,
well, we had American Energy.
Well, we did. We just got the American Energy, and so it was just. But like in the grand scheme of things, peanuts to a monster brand that's doing $500 million a year or something, right? So like, how did those conversations even go when you're like, we're not filing for bankruptcy, but here's what's going to have to happen?
Yeah. So AFI came in and did an asset purchase, right? And it was kind of under an Article 9. And with the asset purchase, obviously, and they didn't even buy the receivable, right? They were really basically trying to breathe life into a company that, we had a great customer base.
So they came in, they bought assets, all AP and AR was wiped out.
Correct.
Essentially.
Yeah. So you're really starting over, right? And in the same breath, where you have a lot of brands out there that were like, okay, well, cool, but you guys got to make good on this old debt, right? Well, that's not what we're buying, and really, hell, if you think back on it, does it go over better if we change the name? Maybe it does.
Well, I guess technically you did change the name, right?
We did. It's
now it's
Europa
Europa
Partners, right? And so, Robbie, myself, and a couple other people, we've spent the last 18 months trying to rebuild bridges, mend fences, et cetera, to basically get back to a holistic place with people, and frankly made a lot of headway.
Of the brands you lost through this, what percentage are back that you wanted back? Because I'm sure at that point in time you were probably carrying 500 brands, and I know you whittled that down significantly.
Probably 80 to 85%. And we still have a couple other key partners out there that we got to get across the line to really basically, be back to a healthy business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because here's my challenge every day, Doug, right? It's like you got to balance a system, right? That can support up to, $500 million, right? But as you go to rebuild the business, you're not there.
Right.
So you have all these systems, people, and things in place, that you got to get revenue in the building to help drive up everything, right? Revenue fixes anything and everything in everybody's world, right? So that's where we're at today. Like, we've got to get a couple other big brands, to kind of cross the line or the aisle, so to speak, and get back to a commercial relationship. Because, like, if I have to go prepay somebody and that brand happens to be somebody that I need $500,000 worth on a given month, that's a lot of jack, right? To just kick out, knowing what the receivable is coming in, what inventory is good on the floor, what your borrowing base looks like coming through the door. I mean, you're juggling kind of all these things. And, if inventory falls below X, right, well, then you're trying to basically figure out, okay, well, what are sales going to look like, less the inventory? What's going to come in that week? How are we going to manage the relationships with brands? Because at the end of the day, I refuse to burn a single person because now it's my name, right? So how are we going to balance this equation? And it's an everyday juggling act.
So what does your day consist of? People ask me that, and I said I have no idea. So do you even have I'm sure there's set things you need to do, but is it just like you're as we say swat and flies?
Flot and swaz.
Flot and swaz is what we say.
Man, I love the people there. So after and I've been working out with Logan, in the morning.
You're gonna need bigger arm sleeves there.
Oh, we gonna get him juice, baby. Come on.
So, after that, walking first thing, catch up on emails, catch up on reporting. But the first hour of my day, man, I spend walking around the building, talking to everybody that I possibly can, especially in the warehouse, right? I think a lot of people underestimate and undervalue their warehouse staff, but at the end of the day, they're the lifeline to the
that's what you guys
business.
do. You're a warehouse.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But whereas, people would say, oh, well, sales, and they're on this pedestal. Well, at the end of the day, sales may be the engine, but the warehouse are the tires on the road that make basically the car go down the road, right? Like if they don't get it out the door, it doesn't matter how good your sales department is, you fail. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I start my day. And then from there, I would say the bulk of what's changed is where I would be on the phone with customers and making sure that those relationships are tight, and obviously brands as well. Now it's probably more brand-centric and efficiency-centric for what basically the day holds in front of me. Because, again, I'm a much bigger fan on delivering on service than I am on anything else, right? Like, the unicorn doesn't exist where, and I kind of look at it as like a triangle where, you can't have it fast, cheap, and good, right?
You
and
only
we've all
have
heard
two.
that.
We just said this the other day.
Which two you want, right? And, as it is with a lot of people, we're running a ton of temps through the building right now and things like that because it's hard to find good workers. And I'd rather be, smooth and fast versus fast and reckless.
Right.
And we've been running too fast and reckless for too long, just trying to get basically through, and I tell people, fixing a mistake is 3 times the cost.
Yeah.
It just is. So we're funny enough, I told the sales staff, I'm like, look, I'd rather, and we can talk about it, but I'd rather basically narrow the scope of what we're trying to do and say, look, I'd rather go back to you as a customer and say, listen, I'm going to add a day of transit time to your order. But in doing so, what I'm doing is making sure that our pickers and packers are taking the time that's necessary to walk through the order, look at the order, to where we're putting as much care as we possibly can into that box when it leaves. It still may get damaged, but did it have enough dunnage in the box? Was it packed the right way? Did we have bars on top of drinks or whatever the case is versus the opposite way, right? Those are the things that we've got to get better at. That, it takes a little time to get people understanding, okay, you got to take just a hair longer to basically make sure that this box goes out the right way. Because really, at the end of the day, the box is what means everything to us. How it gets delivered, how it gets perceived, when it gets, I should say, received and then perceived, is basically kind of our message back to the customer base.
So the sales team here. So, at one point in time, you guys had 80, 100, sales people inside and outside reps. So how has that changed? Like, you at one point in time, I think you had eight different distribution centers, right? Does that sound about right? And now you have, I feel like you just closed one. Mm-hmm. So you have 3.
So Florida is a unique situation, right? One of the things that slightly pre-COVID, but during COVID, you had a lot of regional distributors kind of pop up and start gaining some success in local market. I believe that we can still win in Florida. we had way too many challenges in Florida. Again, I spoke to labor a second ago. We were running, way too many temps through the building. We were diluting our inventory base way too much. And the cost of the building, just from an errors and all these different things, right, that go into running a facility.
Good Lord,
Come on through, son.
that's a big truck.
Sunset
We are
Pacific.
live on the set.
We just put a truckload on that truck, I tell you.
Yeah.
Is that going out to?
It might be
Europa?
going down under.
Let's
Let's go on Europa. Send that straight there.
Yeah. Larry, take a right. So, it basically had a brand call. Logan was a part of it. He was drinking high noons and White Claws.
Well, he calls this call on. I'm on vacation.
How was that?
It was a Friday.
I did.
How was that
you
Wildberry White Claw?
It wasn't Wildberry. It was a Topo Chico. So you come correct first and foremost. I get an email at 11 o'clock on a Friday. I'm on vacation, and it says, "Hey guys, want to kind of have a vendor call at 2." And I'm looking, and I'm like, so I called him, and I said, "I just want to let you know, like, by 2 o'clock, I'm going to be 3 sheets to the wind, son." I said, "Now get on that call." And then, of course, I get on the call. I got, like, a Dale Jr. shirt on. Like, I just been drinking, But the best part was I was on vacation and drinking. There was about 4 other people that were not on vacation and drinking.
I was one of them. So I have every intention.
And that call was to say we are shutting down
Florida.
So basically what I did was I consolidated the inventory that was down in Florida back into North Carolina.
They're like, this fucking new guy's shutting all his shit down.
So I have every intention of going back to Florida probably end of first quarter, if not second quarter. I'm keeping the building. I'm keeping the racking up. I'm keeping the sky lifts. I'm keeping the jacks. Everything down there. Hell, I'm even keeping the telco lines running into the building, right? We've got to rebuild Florida the way that we need to be able to run Florida versus the way we were running Florida. And that's just simply that, right? When your market labor force basically to drive a truck right now starts at $62,000 to make 10 stops a day, and I got 5 trucks sitting in Florida that leases expire October 1st on, that makes no sense to me. That's an expense that I don't need that I could put back into good inventory.
Yeah. So sales reps. So you had about 80, 100, I don't know how many at some point. How many do you have now?
So
because you got rid of like a lot of the outside at some point, right?
Yeah. So we still have outside reps in key metro markets. We have 25 inside sales staff. We've created basically 2 new departments of Europa inside the sales staff that we're now actively hiring for.
All you out there want a job, Europa.
Hey, call me.
Yeah, what's the website? What's the Europa.com?
1-800-447-4795.
Yeah.
So, there's 2 points of touch that I feel like we had and we lost, but also one of the things that we've got to do a better job of is creating a career path for somebody who's coming into the industry. Right?
Yep.
So years ago, if you look back, our drivers came off the road and into customer service went into sales.
That was my route.
Yeah.
You were a driver?
I was a customer service rep.
Yep.
And then I went from customer service for a year, and then went into outside sales for South Carolina and reported to Rick and Justin.
Yep.
Right. So did that for 3 years.
Something.
Like that?
Honestly, it was the longest 36 months of my life.
And you loved every minute of it.
Loved every minute. Wouldn't trade it,
Yeah.
by the way. We formed essentially kind of 2 new departments. One is basically kind of a step up from customer service, which is customer care. And the sole mission of that person's life is to literally sit there, have a list of people to follow up on and say, look, hey, man, I know that you placed an order a couple weeks ago. Wanted to call you back. Did everything get there the way that it should? By the way, I know that from the notes here in our CRM system, you were looking for this. We didn't have it at the time, but now it's available.
So they can take an order too.
They can take an order too, right? But it's solely about a follow-up.
Yep.
And it's solely about a customer
So your
touch.
sales reps are not really doing necessarily follow-ups on specific.
They're doing everything today, right? Where I need those guys because it's a smaller group focused on being consultants of the trade and how they basically help a customer build their business, right?
So how many people are the sales reps calling in a day? How many people do they call on in a day?
It depends. We love to see a number between 35 and 45 outbound activities. But depending upon that rep and their level of business, it may be 10 that day. It's no different than a rep driving down the road, right? A traffic jam's going to happen.
Now, is there any at this point in time? I mean, you guys probably have a book of business, whether or not they're active or not, because of where you were at your peak. That's massive. Is there any cold calling going on at this time, or is it literally servicing the people that are currently actively buying?
Honestly, it's more centered around people that we know are willing to jump in the game. Yeah. Yes. It's very little cold calling, but in the same breath, that kind of brings into that next role of an account consultant, right? Who basically is that farm league system.
This is above sales reps? Above customer care.
Above customer care.
Customer service, customer care.
Sales consultant.
Sales consultant, and then sales rep.
No.
Account executive.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
Got it.
Yeah. How many other departments?
Yeah.
Damn, I mean, just call them whatever you want to.
I love it. Yeah.
Hey, we're throwing out new titles, so do you want to give them a new title?
Yeah. So what?
We can.
I mean, at the end of the day, are your sales reps actively selling and introducing, right? This is one of the things that as a brand,
100%.
We would love to see, and I think that's why we love having Logan down there to help the guys sell.
Yep. By the way, how's that investment been?
We're still figuring it out.
I hate to blow smoke up as tush.
Yeah.
It's been phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't get this to your head, but we love having Logan here, and I think there's been a huge value. And
we don't get much
the story,
work
just so
done
you
when
know,
it's
like
here.
the job was pitched to us. Like most people that get a job here, they're like, "Hey, how I maybe want to work for you." I was like, "All right, cool, pitch a job. How are you going to make us money so that we can make you and help you grow?"
Yeah.
If you can't make us money, then you're not going to grow. So literally, that was the conversation we had. And he's like, "Well, I think this is where you're leaving money on the table. This is where I can help you." And I mean, we're just getting started, and I think it's been phenomenal. So we can talk about how brands are successful with you guys. Yeah. That's another thing. But I'm just curious about these sales reps. Yeah, let's get off Logan's job for a second.
Consultants, Doug.
Well, no,
the sales consultants. So like they are actively, and this is what I've learned, that they are truly introducing. They're not just order takers, right? Which I think is the bad rap that a lot of distributors get.
More so than ever today, they have to be salespeople. More so ever, right? Because again, at the end of the day, you have people calling in for legacy brand, right? But at the end of the day, most legacy is tied to beverage. Well, we just discussed how much dry goods need to be a factor, right? And new innovation has to be a factor. Like the future of what our business is to the specialty market is, and I'm going to say this loosely, isn't just in legacy. You have to have legacy, but you have to have innovation coming into the fold. You have to. Otherwise, then why are y'all here?
Right. Insert core nutrition.
Yeah, and from
right.
and this kind of ties into my day to day is when I'm not here in this building, I'm in that building. Right. So I'm down there actively sitting in the sales pit with their team and introducing new products. And that's the thing is like as much as.
And all it's costing you is $1,900 a month.
A month.
Then why am I paying $5,000 a month for that? What are you talking about?
Well, that's a deduction.
Okay. Yeah. That's just wondering. I was like, I thought it was a lot more expensive.
Anybody interested, call me.
Yeah.
So did you develop that new?
We're
new structure.
We're going to get.
Hey, this is a funny story, real quick.
All right, here.
So my brother worked for Walmart for a number of years out of Bentonville, Arkansas. Then left Walmart and now works for Pilgrim Chicken, selling back into Walmart, Kroger, and Sam's Club. Well, when you go to Walmart, right, a lot of their major brands have offices in their building
that they pay for.
Yes.
Right? Because it creates almost a vendor village where, your core brands basically have direct access, to either basically the decision makers at the business to be able to get things done and turn things faster.
With the right people, that could be a huge win because like they will help. You're not paying their salary, and they're paying basically you to be there to help you
and a lot
win.
of people need an office,
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so if you remember, and I don't think you guys have seen it, but in the old Sweet Sea,
Yep.
we had the fishbowl.
Mm-hmm.
We called it the fishbowl because literally we had an office, nothing but cubicles. It was walled off in glass, which is why we called it the fishbowl, which was going to be where we started a vendor department, so people could have, an on-site person. And it ranges across a variety of different departments, right? It's not just sales.
Right.
If you got an accounting issue, well, there's CFO. Go talk to him.
Right.
So we were trying to basically bring people in closer, versus basically trying to push people away.
So this is
that was all it was.
This is a good segue. So let's talk about the flip side of this. So not just your sales or account manager, whatever title you gave them, your sales dudes and gals, but the flip side when brands presenting to you, and how does a brand be successful? So I guess the first question is: are you getting bombarded with new pop-up brands, startups? Even some old legacy brands that are not in distribution, are you getting bombarded with people that want Europa's help, or is it less now after COVID and the whole, everyone trying to go D2C and everything? Are you still getting a lot of?
There's still a lot of traction there.
Yeah.
To the point I was making earlier, you really have to kind of decide what's going to make or break you and where you want to put your cash, right? So if there's a brand that comes to the fold that has a great, marketing presence, social following, ambassador, things of that nature, and they're scaling, then that's a much easier decision than, your boy doing a startup, with limited.
Every bro that 500 run a pre-workout.
Exactly.
I got this sickest
No
pre-workout
doubt.
ever.
Yeah, exactly.
So that happens quite a bit. So what are you seeing? What works best for somebody who is new into the distribution game? I know the conversation for us. We did have a relationship with Muscle Foods at one point, and we strategically pulled Core because one of the difficulties is our pricing. We didn't set it up exactly how we have it set up now with Europa to be fully successful.
Right.
And what that is we want to make sure that the customer can get it from you as the same price that they could get it from us, right? Otherwise, everyone's going to want to come to us directly, right? So that's a big thing that a brand needs to have the right pricing there, or everyone's just going to want to go direct.
Absolutely.
But and I know the conversation for us was listen, we don't want to just, because we already have an existing business that we have relationships with. We don't want to just come to you and turn over everything to you, because we can do our own warehousing here. But we want to work together as a partner so that, a gentleman's agreement and a paper agreement that's saying, listen, when you activate accounts, those are your accounts and we will help you support them. But if we activate an account, this isn't, we might turn some things over to you that you're better suited to handle than we are.
Yeah.
But those are our accounts. And I think it was a mutually beneficial and a mutual, we both understood each other at that point in time. Do you have a lot of those conversations with new brands coming in, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think to a certain degree, everybody cherry picks, right? To your point, you have customers today that are profitable for you, that are legacy customers. You're always going to support those people, et cetera, right? There may be a time where you guys scale to a certain size where it's look, I just can't do this anymore, and it makes more sense for it to flow this way. Yeah. And then, of course, us or anybody, we pick it up, right?
Well, a big one is we have a pretty decent California account that we just turned over, where they were a great account for us direct, but it was taking forever to get the product there, and we were getting issues, and so it makes more sense when you're out in Vegas to.
Well, and that's what, to roll back, that's why we're going to support guys like you, right? Where you're making a good decision for yourself, but it aligns with what our values are on being able to support you. So that's where we want to make sure that we're being good stewards of your brand. And look, we may not get all your direct business. I don't need it all, but where it makes sense for you and where you're going to protect me is all the other ancillary business that we're able to pick up, right? It's got to be a two-way street, and it can't just be good for me. It can't just be good for you. We've got to figure out basically the best way we travel down the road together. That's it.
Right.
So what else does a brand need to do to be successful? Is it really, do you really want to see traffic driven to Europa. Is that what it is? I mean, like that's what Vitamin Shop wants. That's what GNC wants. Everyone wants the traffic driven there. That's the big thing. It's like, how are you going? Like when a brand's pitching to you, is that like the number one thing that you're really looking for?
I think Vitamin Shop does a pretty good job, right? Depending upon how far your brand goes, I call it a brand crossing the aisle. Tommy Lanyard's not going to sell your brand, right? The guy that's sitting there, with his tag on, right? Like he's not selling your brand. Your brand has to pull from the shelf at that point, right? Which in then itself is basically a whole different slew of conversations.
That's your marketing department.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I would say one thing there though, that is where I think a lot has changed that I've seen over the years. And it's the same as in Vitamin Shop as Mom and Pops. Is like when we first opened Arlington Nutrition Corner 12 years ago or whatever, we had sales reps in our door all the time. All the Glambia, Quest, I mean, even the smaller brands, right, would come to VPX. Like they would come through our doors, and we moved product for them because they had
a relationship.
The relationship.
And USP Labs is great at it because they had a program they rolled out with their reps. Is like you hang out in that store and you sell for that store at that time.
Yeah.
Right. So I remember the USP Labs rep he would hang out for 3 to 4 hours, and he would act as a sales guy within the store for that store, not just USP Labs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's selling some USP Labs, but if that product was better for Core Fury, he's going to pitch.
And you wanted that guy in there all the time.
Yes.
And that's where we are. So I think you need at least one of the other. You need that strong pull because you have C-Bum, right? The hottest thing in bodybuilding these days. He's going to pull because of like they're going to go in there looking for Thavage or whatever the product is. Or you have to really have a ground game to build the relationships. Yeah. And that's where, for us, we don't have a C-Bum. I mean, I got 60,000 followers and I'm our C-Bum, right? but, but it's our relationships. And that's where these guys come in and the other guys on the team.
So when I'm talking to a new brand, there's a couple questions I ask, right? Like one, is the brand cool? Cool's always going to be cool, right? How's it priced, right? And does it taste good? Again, going back to that triangle of good, fast, or cheap, right? So on. It's kind of the same. You still need 2 of the 3 of those. Like it can be, it can taste good and be priced right. Okay, you probably win there. It can be more expensive, but it can be cool, and it can be good, right? It's the same concept. And I think that as long as a brand kind of capitalizes on 2 of those 3, they're fine. And we'll figure out the rest of it.
So, fellas, I mean, I've gone through a bunch of the stuff that I wanted to hear. What else do you guys have for Justin while we're here? You have anything else?
Well, the one thing I just taking in, and just listening to you, and what we've preached on and harped on is just, we keep, sales reps but like really it's relationship representatives, right? Like you seem to be, it is super relationship focused at Europa right now.
Yes.
Right. Like how I love the follow-up role, right? Like, and that is just going back to the relationship. And it's just like, how do we win more with you, right? What else can we do for you from a service standpoint, And I think that's how we've won at Core Nutritionals, like there was a time where like I was super anxious when I first started, and I was
get out of here.
Right, me being anxious.
What are you talking about?
Frantic, anxious, where I thought we needed to be in every single store in the country.
Yeah.
And then I quickly realized like our brand is not built for every single store in this country, right?
It's not.
But like there's a store over here that has a little bit of our product that has some values that align with us. Where, hey, if I spend more of my hours on this store, we can get this store to where we need them to be, in a yearly standpoint, right? And I think that's seems to be a big part of your restructuring process. Is like, hey, let's kind of
figure out where you can win.
Right.
Well, and
everybody, you always win. Any customer or any brand or business should be winning at a service standpoint, at a customer service relationship standpoint.
You hit the nail on the head. Not every customer is a good customer for me.
Right.
It's just not, and I'm okay accepting.
Some don't pay their bills.
Hey,
hey,
and some want it for free.
Right.
Right. We all have to make money to be here.
Right. No, it's good.
For me, And
Man, can I just say your radio voice is just on point. You go down another octave and you just
I got a face for radio. I know that.
It's kind of sexy.
It is. I'm glad I have this robe is covering it up.
Midnight jams.
Golly.
So
Hey, hold on.
Try again. Meat Brigade.
Oh yeah. There we go. Nailed it.
So, you know, the one thing that drew me to Core, right, more so than anything after I sat down and pitched my job to Doug and Patrick and James and Dave and all these guys, was that, you know, the culture here is something that I haven't had since 2014, 2015 Europa, right? So when I come here, it's just, yeah, Doug's my boss. Yeah, I report to Patrick, right? I look at those guys as my friends as well. Like the same way that I did with you back in the day, right?
Sure.
And friend is loose these days, right? Like it's a business relationship.
Exactly.
No. But, you know, no, Justin and I still, we like to kill an animal together. So we still do that.
You just got canceled.
So, but, you know, what I remember was, you know, you rewind the clock. Like, I remember there being dudes that were willing to go take a bullet for Jeff and Eric and the Europa business. And the culture there was, you just felt it, right? When you went down those hallways, like, those guys were all on the same page. They were buddies. They were, you know, all had the same mission, all had the same goal. You know, with you coming in as the new head and this is your, you know, regime now, right? Are you putting an emphasis on getting that back? Like, what is your, you know, what do you see that looking like in the next, you know, 18 months of you running this thing?
You know, one of the things that, first and foremost, it's about transparency.
Right.
You know, all of us went through a tough time. We, you know, and guys, I'm not going to sugarcoat. We're still going through a hard time. It just is, right? As we try to basically rebuild and recapture. You know, transparency with people is a finicky mistress.
Right.
You know, it is, right? Like, everybody wants it, but at the end of the day, it's like, I gave you this analogy. It's like a dog chasing a car. It wants to catch the car, but when it grabs it,
what's it going to do?
What are you going to do with it, right? And
is that the CEO title? Everyone wants the CEO title, and then once you get there, what are you going to do with it?
Absolutely.
This bumper's kind of hard.
Yeah, exactly, right? You know, but no, you know, so I made a point to make sure that I was going to be as transparent as I could along the journey, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. You know, look, if we're going to be in this to win it, you know, well, then everybody needs to understand the hardship too.
Right.
You know, and it's not just about, you know, rainbows and unicorns, right? Like, it's got to be the real conversation of, look, sales team, I need you guys to recover X amount of people not paying freight and get them on board with understanding why that freight's important. Not because I'm trying to recover X amount of dollars from them, but because if I don't, right, and you continue to get a pass, look, it's creating an unhealthy dynamic for us across the landscape of doing business.
Right.
You know, and it's just a real conversation. I've tried to basically convey every brand win with people, right? How we're basically negotiating our terms positions, how we're renegotiating our freight rate positions, how we're going to basically try to drive this thing out over the next 2 and 3 years.
Right.
You know, more importantly, how do we make sure that we win in fourth quarter, which is traditionally slower for everybody?
Yep.
Right. You know, I mean, so it's really based around transparency. It's based around, frankly, talking to people. I told people, look, for the last 18 months, you know, if you walked into Europa, everybody had their head down, doing their job, and that was it, right? Just head down, look, you know, go, right? And there is a bright world out there. Pick your head up. Look at what's going on around you. Make better decisions based upon what your role is and how it affects the person next to you. You know, and those are the, you know, those small little changes, you know, that can really affect the culture of the direction of which we're trying to head. You know, and I think that, you know, the more we basically have, these, and not just calling it interdepartmental meetings, right? But having these big, large group meetings so everybody, the warehouse understands the appreciation level that we have for them for what they need to do every day because they make or break your number. Everything that the sales team basically contributes. I told people, like, look, day one, if we're not buying it, selling it, processing it, shipping it, and collecting on it, then we got to change it. Because that's who we are, right? Now there's a lot of things that go into that, but what's the most important? Well, it's how that package arrives to that customer. That's what's most important, right?
And that's where, you guys align with us is, we make decisions a lot of times, like you even talk about, the customer in California we were speaking of, that customer was waiting 2 weeks to get products. And sometimes it became a thing. Like it was a big deal. So, our whole thing is it is best for that customer to be able to get his stuff in 2 days versus 2 weeks.
I think he's a lot happier now.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, 100%.
Hopefully so.
So, and I'm gonna pump your tires for a minute.
Here we go.
I already
Bring
got
it,
mine
baby.
pumped.
Come on.
But
We need that PO. Come on.
Is David Hayes back working?
He is.
Yeah, let's call him up. Let's get him on live.
He was back in yesterday.
Okay, all right, here we go.
Those guys down in that office, they love you, right? And they've reported to you. You've been not just a boss, you've been a friend. You've been essentially family to those guys. And I'll say the same on my end, right? Like I consider you one of my best friends in this world. And
You don't get to choose your family.
yeah, unfortunately. But no, every time I'm in there and talking to the guys, and because I have had that relationship with the boys in sales down there for 10 years,
Yeah.
I get to hear the stuff that nobody else normally gets to hear. Like they're not going to tell every vendor, hey, well, this guy's f***ing dick. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody says the same thing. It's like, no, I got Justin's back, right? And you got guys that are willing to do the same thing that, Jeff and Eric had, which is you got guys rowing the boat in the exact same direction that you are, and they want to be there and win with you because you've always made it clear. Like, the one thing that you did that I don't know that I ever really even said anything to you about was when your sales manager left, you literally, the cube that I sit in when I'm in there, all of a sudden you were in there. You moved from your office and went and sat in the pit with the boys and got your hands dirty with them. There's not many guys that were going to do that in a leadership position. So those boys knew, hey, Weeks has got our back. So I think you're doing everything the right way. I think that you guys are on the right track to kind of getting back to exactly where you were and then some, right? So
that's a perfect segue to final question here. When we have you back next September for the follow-up podcast on this, what is a win for you over the next year? What you can look past over the last 12 months?
Getting to September.
Like if you could look back in a year from now and be like, all right, we accomplished this. And it's not like, don't give me a revenue number, right?
Okay.
But like, what are the main things that you really want to see happen over the coming year where you can look back a year from now when we have this podcast again and be like, we won because we did X, Y, and Z or accomplished X, Y, and Z?
It's probably going to be, the big circle that I was talking about earlier.
The circle jerk?
Yeah.
What are we talking about
I
here?
thought we were talking about triangles.
Yeah. We moved from triangles to circles and talking in a big enough circle to where
okay.
everybody goes around it. What would be a win? Honestly, it's not a revenue number. It really isn't, right? If it was tied to a revenue number and you sat there and said, okay, well, Europa bounced back and we're now a $400 million partner again. Well, at the end of the day, a $400 million partner making nothing sucks.
Right.
I'd rather be $100 million
Right.
making money,
Right.
and those people basically who rally around us, not just, outside the building, but inside the building are being able to lead the lives that they want to lead. Right. So I would think a win first and foremost is one, and and this is no bullshit, right? it's making it to September. We've had a ton of challenges. Yep. I've got to continue to basically work with the groups in Europa to make sure that we're, one, being good stewards of our brands. But that outward-facing perception from our brand communities and our customer communities, knowing that we're their partner is a win, right? Knowing that those relationships, because look, man, I've got relationships out there with people, with Gold's Gym, for example, right? I've been doing business with those guys personally for 17 years, right? I came from there. That's how I started here. They'll be more personable to me than so many other people out there, But right now, where I had 100% of their business, I get about 50% of it today. A win for me is those guys leaning back in with me saying, don't care. These guys got me, right? That's my win. That's where I'm trying to get to.
And that's because you'll have everything rolling in the right direction. Yeah. All right, that's awesome. You guys have anything else?
Good.
I think I'm good.
I appreciate you guys.
All right, man, that was
allowing me
awesome.
the opportunity. No,
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Love the partnership and the commitment you guys have given to us. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate having you on, and you will come back in a year from now and tell us you won. I feel it in my nugs.
My plums.
Feel it in my plums.
You're blown.
All right, guys. Till next time, keep crushing it.
All right. Thank you.